podcast from Drew and Mike I think it's really cool, and that is what I wanted to say.
Two and a mic. Books are an enduring passion. They are a means to enter a new world with undefined rules, in which I can allow my mind to wander. They allow me to think about others, imagine how others feel and react, behave and talk, walk and see. Novels can be guides to empathy. They can allow us to open our minds and see something different, some other mind or thought at play. Here Greg and I review The Black Echo by Michael Connolly. And what is crime, if not a journey into the mind of a criminal? What is a detective drama, if not the tale of society seeking to mend its ills? Thank you, Greg, for your time. Enjoy. Greg, it's great to have you back for the book club continues. How you doing, man?
I'm very well, thank you. And you?
Yeah, good. Today's Ascension Day in Germany, which means that we have some serious heights to reach in the quality of our discussion. So therefore, we might as well admit now that we're not going to quite get there.
Shit, I'll leave, should I? get someone else on here.
But yeah, so we're talking about The Black Echo, which is the first Bosch novel by Michael Connolly. Before we start, I've made a note that I'd like to pay my tributes to Lance Reddick, who passed away recently. He plays Chief Irving in the TV show.
Oh, right.
You didn't know about this? You didn't hear about this?
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, he died very young at the age of 60. One day he was fine, and the next day I think he passed away at home. From the first time that I saw Lance Reddick in Fringe, I thought, wow, this guy has an aura.
Some presence he does, yeah.
Yeah, and he just had that in every show, whatever piece of work that he did. I think he was also in the theatre on the stage, and he will be missed. His walk, his talk, his look, his voice, fantastic, absolute talent.
Yeah, I mean, the character of Irving is a key one. In it, probably more so in the books, but he really brought his own special take to the character, I think, to the screen. We'll do this in the discussion to come, but the books and the series, as always with these things, are never quite the same, and the storylines change quite a lot. Between the difference between the two can be stark, but he brought his own take to the character of Irving, which was it's a very important character to Bosch and the development of Bosch's own storyline in the book series.
Yeah, and I don't think you're on Twitter, but Titus Welliver, whenever an actor passes away, Titus Welliver pays his respects and mentions we have become fewer. And I believe he's talking about obviously his sector, but also I think about a certain kind of group of actors, and I include actresses within that. But when it was Lance, he said, "I haven't lost a friend, I've lost a brother." And I think it was very touching the way Titus Welliver pays his respects to all of these actors, I presume most of whom he's known, but I think in the case of Lance, he worked very closely with Lance Reddick, so I think that must have touched him quite deeply.
I'm sure it did. They certainly worked together for a number of years, and I'm sure they had a bond.
Yeah, definitely, and obviously condolences to Lance Reddick's family.
Indeed.
So you suggested this book, and you
I did. It's such a long time ago.
But on top of that, it wasn't just the book that you suggested, because you also then contacted me and said, dude, you've got to listen to the audio book because
Titus
yeah,
Welliver actually recorded. He did a special version because there was an original audio book of this done in the 1990s, but they did a special with Titus reading it, and it's fantastic.
yeah, yeah. No disrespect paid to the original narrator,
No, not
but
at all.
at the end of the day,
I've heard 5 other novels by the original narrator now, and he does a smashing job too. But for me, listening to the voice of Bosch read the Bosch novel, it does give it something a little extra.
yeah, definitely. And so, when I got the audio book, and I wanted to listen to the Titus Welliver version, and so now I have both versions. So
Yeah.
Okay, that's the way it goes. But yeah, fantastic. Listening to Bosch, do Bosch, think Bosch, is amazing. And also, I don't know if you listened at the end of that particular version. There's an interview with him and Michael Connolly. Yeah.
Yes, I
Okay,
did.
cool. Maybe we can comment a little bit about that later on if we don't run out of time. So, as you read or listened to this such a long time ago, the storyline perhaps eludes you somewhat. Would you like me to remind you of it?
So, as I remember, this really builds the character of Bosch in a way that, because the series doesn't start with this story. This story is not involved in a series whatsoever. So you really get a sense, and this is what's really interesting about the difference between the TV series and the books. The books were written in the early 90s. So it's a fantastic update of what I'd call American noir, that kind of detective story written in the third person, but from the point of view of the detective. So everything's Bosch did this, he said that, he saw that, but it's all written in the third person, and it really updates noir in a way that I found fascinating. Very easy to listen to, very easy to read, very easy to get involved in the story and want to listen to more. It's so well written and delivered that you can be doing anything and have this on while you're doing it, and you're engrossed in the story, and you feel as though you're following it all the time, and it really takes you along with it. To take the point of what I mean is, go ahead, yes.
Before you start talking about the story, to just quickly interject, because you've mentioned, you've talked about the style, as it were, and the genre, and I just want to throw in my bit. Whenever I've tried to introduce Bosch, the TV series, to somebody who hasn't yet seen it or heard of it, I always say this is the closest that American cop drama has got to Morse. Because of the things that you say, and the way that it's presented, and I think that proximity, that intensity, and there's a revelation of the individual's police officer, the main character's personal feelings and life story. I think it's bang on, Inspector Morse.
I think you have something there. When you look at the character of Morse and Bosch, they're both they are both always striving to protect the innocent or the weak. And there's some, Bosch's his own little sort of internal monologue where he says, "Everyone counts or no one counts," and that follows through with his actions. He's always harsh on those he feels are unfair, and he deals with them in a way that you'd say, but only Bosch could, using the tone, the language, the threat, which is always delivered in his own fashion. But yeah, I mean, so going back to the first book, what was fascinating was, I don't know about you, but very early on in the book, he goes to do and one of the great things that Michael Connolly does, his take and the detail of knowledge that he shows and how things work and how the police system works throughout the ages. The detail and the knowledge that he must have of that shines through, because it's not, these aren't just things that are thrown in. He knows certain forms have to be filled in. He discusses he doesn't want to fill that form. It's all like as though he was a cop. I don't know his background, but he certainly seems to have done a lot of research. If he wasn't involved in law enforcement, he's done a hell of a lot of research in order to be able to come up with just the functionality of how the police work in LA in particular. So what I loved in one sequence of the book where Bosch goes to do a search on an individual. It says early 1990s, and they have to wait for about 3 minutes for the computer to send back a report of names. Which of course seems ridiculous to us now, but of course I do remember those early computers, and it's lovely to read.
3 minutes now. 3 minutes was quick.
You're lucky.
I was going to talk about this later because for general reviews and so on, but I'll bring it in now because you mentioned it. There was a guy I read his, and he's a professional reviewer, book reviewer, and he reviewed this book. I think he reviewed it in 2013. Okay. And he mentions, he says it's cliched, it's aged, there's nothing new. And he said, I mean, he continuously talks about actions which nowadays you just say Google it, man. And I think 1 minute, this was first published in 92. Yeah, this was Connolly's first book. Google didn't exist in 1992. The internet just about, I think, had some kind of people were slightly aware of it in 92.
We didn't have access to the internet back in 92. There was no internet as such to speak of.
No. So these kinds of reviews have to be taken with a serious pinch of salt. I mean, he still gave it 6 out of 10, considering he basically tried to just pummel the book. But I think those people who review things, it's like saying Shakespeare. Why don't you just get on the bus? What is all this bullshit? I think some reviewers are a bit harsh, and they try to make a reputation by jumping on the reputation of others. This was Connolly's debut book. And it was bloody good.
It stands up on its own, and obviously it did that in order for the series to have gone on for so long, and for the character to exist all this time, and of course have the reboot, as it were, in terms of the Amazon Prime series, which borrows a lot from the novels, but also takes its own. Very much takes its own stands on its own, and takes its own route in terms of the storylines. So in this, the first book, which, as I mentioned, isn't in a TV series, we get to understand who Bosch is and where he's come from. So we know we get to understand what's his backstory in terms of what's happened to his mother, although that's played upon much further later on, and the link between him and what happened to him in Vietnam is very strong in the book. Again, in a way that it's not possible for it to be in the series, because in the series, Titus Welliver, he can barely be touching 60 in 2015, and he can't draw upon so much. They do mention it in the series, the TV series, but it's not. Whereas in the book, it's part of who he is. This tunnel rat who was sort of sent down, Lord knows how many dark tunnels, and it didn't know if he was going to come up alive, or what was waiting for him down there. And that sense of real dread and fear that he has, especially when he has to go down a tunnel again, it's there. It's palpable in the character in a way that it's hard to do when the story is set in 2015.
Yeah. And also, I mean, in the TV series, they've substituted Vietnam for Iraq and Afghanistan, I think. Yeah, so he still has this military background.
The thing is, the whole tunnel thing is what makes in particular first book. That's what makes it, the story so well developed.
Because it also ties in with the FBI investigation.
Exactly. So
and that's why it's fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant. And also, as a debut novel, it seems to me that Michael Connolly put a lot of himself into the book. So therefore, the name of Bosch, Hieronymus. Yeah. This is a Spanish artist.
No, he was Dutch Flemish. I think. Okay. I think he was Dutch Flemish artist. His works were I'd say groundbreaking, but they're harrowing almost. His works depict scenes of utter confusion or hell. Very dark, very morbid, very confusing.
Dante-ish, is it a bit like?
It's not dark in that sense. I mean, I'm sure I'm by no means an art critic here, so I don't know exactly the message he's trying to get across. But when you see there's elements of darkness and light. They're very playful. They're ahead of their time. If you were to see Bosch's work, you wouldn't necessarily look at it and think, right, this was painted in the 16th century. But he's quite a well-known artist. But it's I think it's a play to suggest that a prostitute in the 1970s would have chosen that as the name for her son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was it the mother that chose it or the father?
I think later we find out it was the mum.
Yeah, you could be right. I can't remember, but yeah, indeed. Which again sort of speaks of Connolly's sort of character building, and then also so just to introduce some of the different parts of it. So we've already spoken about. So the story starts where an addict and apparently homeless person is found dead in some pipe in LA, and clearly he's died of an overdose. The investigators on the scene basically write it off as typical bullshit. This is so low on our priorities. Let's just get rid of take it back down and end of story. Whereas Bosch doesn't dismiss it from the off, and he recognizes something about this character because they were indeed, as you said, tunnel rats together in Vietnam. So he knew the guy. Then there's a concurrent FBI investigation into bank robbers who have been tunneling their way into vaults, accessing specific safety deposit boxes. So therefore, there's this investigation ongoing there as well. So they're currently two separate investigations, two separate forces. Mm-hmm. At the same time,
but that comes later, right? Yeah. I mean, as you sorry, Karen, and then I'll
no, go on.
I was just going to say that that essence of Bosch to not just take the easy route and whatever gets rid of, right, okay, let's close that case off, it's gone and dusted. It's the easiest thing to do is not make it a murder, because by making it a murder, it's something not only do I have to investigate, but it goes on our record. And of course, what the police captain that he has, Pounds, who becomes an antagonist later, he all he cares about is his figures. He doesn't give a damn about people's lives, livelihoods, or anything like that. All he cares that at the end of the day, how many murders have they solved? How many cases have they closed? That's all that matters to him. It's just a numbers game. So the easiest thing for the police to do is when they turn up with these things, if it's a possible OD, it's basically nothing for them to do. It doesn't go on their figures. It doesn't harm their figures whatsoever. So they can just push it to one side and say some guy's OD'd, and it makes things easy. But Bosch isn't like that. Firstly, he recognizes the guy, and he sees some telltale signs that there's more to this than meets the eye, which other detectives are willing to just either they don't see, or just willing to look past. And that works into the character we're talking about of Bosch and the fairness thing that he has, which he shares with our own beloved detective in Oxford.
Yeah, indeed, Mr. Morse.
Indeed.
Endeavour. Another one with an interesting first name.
Yeah, it was right.
Yeah. Yeah, and then so alongside these two investigations, there's this other story. So Chief Irving, who here plays a completely different character to that which we know played by Lance Reddick in the show. This guy doesn't like Bosch, and there's a bit of history. So previously there was a serial killer, which is something which was covered, I believe, in the show, the TV show.
That comes up in the second book. See, this is the thing. This is where they get things. So the second book concentrates far more on that particular thing, because they go back and so Honey Chandler is brought into it.
Okay.
So that's when she. So whereas in the first series, Honey Chandler's straight away. I think in the very first episode we have Honey Chandler. She doesn't feature really in the first book, but in the second book she comes in.
Yep.
I do believe it is the second book. But yeah. So that does come into it, but later on.
Yeah. And with Irving, then in this in the book, he's out to get Bosch. He just doesn't like the way Bosch does things, and he sends his goons, as Bosch refers to them, Lewis and Clark. Now, these names will be familiar to people who have studied U.S. history and the Louisiana expedition in particular, because these were the two people for whom, or by whose, I suppose, adventures this expedition became known. But actually, the expedition was a success because of Sacagawea and York, who really made the expedition a success. I just thought I'd add that because their names are not spoken often of enough. Anyway, okay, another person that we get to meet quite quickly when Bosch decides to invade the FBI offices is Eleanor Wish. Now, Eleanor is a completely different character in the book and the TV series.
Well, okay. So again, this is where the dates thing comes into it. Mm-hmm. So just to clear up something, it's actually the third book which covers which Honey Chandra, I think, is introduced to us in the second book, but in the third book is where she really comes into focus, which is called The Concrete Blonde, where the case for what happened for Bosch in the past, which is what Pounds and he really sort of fell out over, as well as Irving. So and the tensions between the three come out a lot in book 3. So, but sorry, going back to what you were saying there, in the series, Eleanor Wish is already the ex-wife of Harry Bosch, and up to book 5, which is what I've just finished. There's no mention of wedding yet, because we're still in 1994-95 in the books by the end of book 5, whereas in 2015 Harry Bosch has got a teenage daughter with Eleanor Wish, and she's so in that one she's we doesn't really touch on why she's a discredited FBI agent, but we're delivered that in the first book in what she does in order to prevent the crime, but she does something which is, in Bosch's view, unforgivable. She breaks the law, and he gives her an ultimatum that either she hands herself in, or he's going to take matters much further. Which of course she decides to hand herself in, and spends she's not in the next 2 or 3 books because of that.
Okay, right. But she doesn't go to prison though. Clearly,
no, she does.
Oh, does she?
Oh, yeah, she does.
Oh, okay.
No, she goes down. She goes away for 4 or 5 years, which is why when she comes back, it's very hard for her to find any kind of employment, because she's not only is she an ex-con, she's an ex-con FBI agent, which it's almost doubly bad for her. So
I thought she just got a slap on the wrist and that was it.
No, because of what she did. I mean, she could have cost Bosch's life, remember, in toward the end of the book. And although she ended up saving it in a way, I don't know how much we need to spoil this, but because of what she did initially, she put the whole investigation under threat, people's lives, all because corners were cut, massive corners were cut. And yeah, Bosch, even though he really liked her, she was, they were lovers in the book. That was, his sense of right did not allow him to forgive her that, and he made her hand herself in, and she did time for it.
Okay, all right, yeah. So you see, as you can see, I've not read the books, and except for Black Echo, and so therefore I need to catch up with where you are. But I think there were 19 novels written, weren't there, in the Bosch series? So there's quite a bit to go.
Yeah, I knew there's I didn't know exactly how many, but yeah, there's quite a way to go still.
Cool. Okay. All right. So yeah. All right. We don't want to talk too much more about the details of the book, because then we've already entered sort of spoiler territory. So let's not spoil it further. What would you say to somebody to convince them to read the book? Because for me, it's great, but I've seen the series and I didn't need any convincing. And then when you mentioned, but Titus Welliver reads it, then that's it. There's no question of whether, it's just when. But somebody who hasn't seen the show, hasn't read the books, how do you convince them to read it?
Look, there are many different types of book for different, and there are people out there who will love and who will not love this book or this series. If what you're looking for is beautiful prose, and high-minded writings, then that's not really what this is. This is a fast-paced police drama on paper, delivered to you in a very technical manner, with great detail, very well written, very well researched, and it will make you want to continue reading it until you found out exactly what's going on, because there's always a twist, there's always a mystery, and the twist always, from the books I've read, makes sense in the end. You're scratching your head at the end thinking, did you really? It's so well written and researched in that sense that when the twist is delivered, it's believable, it's plausible, and you actually feel a sense of relief that you've got to the end, you found out what's going on, and I really enjoyed that. And you get a sense of, as strong a character as Bosch is, there's always some element of luck that seems to help him out, whether it's luck in terms of finding that bit of evidence, which so often is the case in life. I think that you come across so many things through luck that you wouldn't otherwise have done. It's not, of course, you have to put in the hard work as well, but so many things turn on a little bit of evidential luck, which you would you could easily not have fallen into your lap, and luck in terms of saving his life, and a small detail which could have gone another way, someone taking a different turn, and wouldn't have saved his life at a particular time, when he's grappling with a bad guy at the end of a book or so. There's a lot of that goes into it, and if you like that kind of tension, and sort of fast paced, but also very detailed police drama, then I think these books certainly should provide you with some entertainment.
I think also, as we mentioned before, the character development within the book and the TV series. I think the casting for the TV series is fantastic. Even Maddie. I mean, they pick up this girl who's very young, and she manages to carry this character for through her adolescence, and even into Bosch legacy. The longevity of the character it's brilliant. For a young person, as in it's different. I mean, the other adult characters, they are already sort of adults. They've established themselves within a career, but you're always taking a bit of a risk when you pick a child character. But I think they were fantastic for the character who plays Maddie in the TV series.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So as we also alluded to earlier, there's in the special audiobook which Titus Welliver reads, at the end there's a bit of an interview with him and Michael Connolly. Now, in the creation of the TV series, Michael Connolly plays a big role in production, and I think that really brings out the true flavor of the books. It also, I think, allows Michael Connolly to revisit elements of the original series, the original books, which perhaps he has since reflected upon and thought, oh, maybe I can try this as well. Not necessarily to improve, but just to sort of variate his creation. And what struck me about the interview was, we're not talking about producer and actor, or later on two producers, or a writer and actor. We're listening to friends.
Mm-hmm.
They had that level of intimacy in their exchanges, which I thought was great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, they've been working together for quite a while, obviously. And at this point, I'm sure that they've had their moments. So they probably see each other at their best and their worst. Nothing ever goes completely smoothly. So they I'm sure there've been shouting matches and all those things in the background. But and elation when a project gets the wrap.
There's definitely mutual respect between the two. They know exactly what the other one brings to the table. So it's always great because we know these people with their sort of professional work, either their books or their acting. But when you watch them interact, I mean, I always remember one of my favorite ever interviews. I've only seen it on YouTube. Included Paul Newman and a few other actors talking about the history of method acting. Their exchanges, the way that they talk, it's like the defenses are off. Because I'm speaking with a friend here, I'm speaking with another actor. These people know all the shit that goes on in the background, and you actually get a very small window into who these people are. And so I really do appreciate it when you get that opportunity to listen to these people interact among themselves. Yeah, it's great for me.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen the interview you're talking about, but maybe I'll look it up.
Yeah, I'll try to find it again and send you a link. That was brilliant. Yeah, shame, obviously, Paul Newman also passed away some years ago. Yeah, okay. So, Greg, to conclude then, would you, or I should say, how highly would you recommend this book and this series and the TV series to fans of crime?
Yeah, I mean, but to fans of crime, especially as you say, those people who get a real kick out of Morse, and between series of Endeavour or whatever, all of which are off our screens currently, this would be a nice project for them to take up that slack, as it were, because it definitely has a similar feel. Of course, it's very different in the streets of LA, and it's tough talking cop to the gentleman Morse that we have. But there are some similarities between them that and especially in the storytelling, I think, and the background and some of the difficulties they face. Well, obviously Morse has his demons that he's fighting throughout the series, which get the better of him at the end. Many of them are liquid demons.
Oh man,
and
John Thor.
John Thor, yeah. Of course, in what is interesting in the Bosch series, again, not really covered so much in the TV series because by then it's already all over. You get a sense in the books of that time in LA where cigarette smoking is going from being acceptable to not acceptable, and as you follow the books through, they're getting pushed further and further. So in the first book, they're smoking inside the police headquarters, but by the time you get through to book 4 and 5, not only are they on the pavement, they've been pushed away from the pavement. And in the 5th book, the police chief has had to ask the municipal courts if you can actually push them further away from the building than the pavements, and they've said no, the pavements aren't yours. There's public land, so you can't push them further away from the police department than public land. So Bosch said it looks like most of the time when you're arriving to work, it's like a picket line you have to cross to get in with all these guys smoking outside. So it's interesting to follow that.
Yeah, well, I remember being in LA in the 90s and being told you're not allowed to smoke on the streets, but you can only smoke in certain areas or maybe at home. But you can't just light up and smoke along the pavement because people don't like it. They'll complain. So yeah, I do remember that occurring. I also just wanted to point out one thing that I wanted to mention before we didn't speak about much of, and that is Bosch's partner.
Jerry Edgar.
Jerry Edgar in the series. I love the guy. I think he's brilliant, and I think he has a certain depth to him. And I can't remember which series it is, which refers back to his history. I think he's from Haiti, isn't he?
Yes, he's Haitian. Yes, that's right. That actually is tackled in one of the series where they get embroiled in some kind of political thing going on with the Haitians, and he becomes very key. I'm guessing that this is something that's going to happen in one of the books to come, maybe at some point in the future. But I haven't visited that yet. We'll remember. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. And but there's a very he's presented very differently in the book because he's basically an estate agent.
He's an estate agent, yeah.
he's a cop so that he can get to know cops. He can sell homes to retiring cops. That's basically the reason why he's a police officer. It seems to me, it's completely different kind of character, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if you carry on with the subsequent books, he and Bosch have a very different relationship. in the books than they do in the series, and they're really pretty tight in the series. Not so in the books. And that comes across in the first book, but if you carry on through, they have a big falling out to come. But again, not to spoil too much.
Yeah, cool. No, but I know we were coming to an end of it, but I just remember I had to mention Jerry Edgar because I love the character, I love the actor in the series as well, and brilliant.
Yeah, no, he's unashamedly an estate agent. I think he says that he makes much more money by selling houses than he does through his police. And a big thing's made of his clothing. He's always immaculately dressed in suits and expensive shoes and things like that. And Bosch is always wondering at how on earth he's able to afford all this stuff.
Whereas in the TV series, his wife is the estate agent, and he sometimes helps out.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's not, again, that's a device that's been used to do that. I guess. But isn't he always getting divorced in the TV series? There's always something going on in the background with his wife where she's trying to leave him, or
she does in the TV series. She does leave him. Yeah, they do. They get divorced, and then she has another partner, and but the other partner is very respectful of Jerry Edgar. They have a good relationship. I do believe there's still affection between the two, especially when Edgar gets injured. But anyway,
to roll back to where we started this almost. Also, in the second series on TV show, the character of Irving, he also, I mean, of course, it's under tragic circumstance for him. His wife leaves him too. You remember that?
Yes, of course I do. Yeah, and that's when he teams up personally with Bosch, and that's a fantastic series as well. Yeah. If that's the one that we're referring to? Yeah.
Are you 7 of 9? Isn't it?
Yes. Of
course. She plays the wife of the Armenian.
The Armenian gangster, or the
gangster, cousin of the gangster, who's a pornographer
from Vegas, or
Vegas LA sort of link.
Yeah, which also helps out the storyline to develop with Eleanor, because she lives in Vegas too. So
she lives in. That's right. So he's able to go and visit with Maddie and again, reading that book. That book, which one was that? I think that's the 5th book. That is the 5th book.
Okay.
Yeah, that one's called Trunk Music.
Could be, because he's found in the trunk of the car, isn't he?
So, yeah.
I mean, again, though, great storytelling. I mean, I haven't read the book, but the series as it developed was brilliant, and and also the combination, the way that he gets the character to Bosch to connect with Eleanor in Vegas. I think it's fantastic. Cool. Okay. All right. We've already brought this almost to an end. Just one more thing from me, and then please add whatever you wish to add. But another thing that Bosch and Morse have in common is fantastic soundtrack. Bosch is one of those where I hate skipping the intro because the music is fantastic, and I absolutely love Barrington Falung for Morse as well.
Of course.
So love them both.
Yeah, no, I of course, and all through the book, and if they follow this through in the TV series, which I can only assume comes from the author's own love of jazz, but Bosch is a huge jazz fan, and when on his nights off, almost he finds himself gravitating towards a jazz club in LA, sitting back with a whiskey, almost closing his eyes and listening to the set, which I'm sure is something. That you can find the author doing on his nights off.
Quite possibly. Yeah.
Put his feet up. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Greg. It's my turn now to pick a book, isn't it?
I fear it is.
Yeah, you fear it is. But I've actually picked one which I think you're going to enjoy. And it's called Alexandria: The Quest for the Lost City by Edmund Richardson.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you the link, and you can have a go at it. You're going to love it.
Have you already read it?
I have. Actually, what I've done is I've listened to it read by the author.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. And the story is unbelievable. I'm going to listen to it again in preparation for this. It really opened my eyes to certain chapters of history. Yeah, let's just say that the East India Company is very well described for the beast and the horror that it was. So it's a fantastic book, and I'm going to really enjoy going through it again and reviewing it with you as well. So
Okay, thank you for that.
Cool. Good. Greg, thank you very much. I know it's a holiday for me, but you're working, so I better let you get back to it. So thanks a lot, man. And yeah, my love to the family, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Mike. Two and a mic.